morning. We're really good at this. Keep watching in the hopes that we get better.
I know.
Hi, my name is Robyn.
And I'm Adriana.
And this is the first episode of the Who Killed Your Darling podcast.
I was like, were we supposed to say that together?
I don't know. We don't have anything figured out or... Yeah.
I feel like the equivalent of like somebody who has like massive stage fright. I'm just like...
It's weird. It's weird. Because so I work for the company that uses this studio. And so I'm usually behind the scenes just like, you know, having a good time. And then once I guest hosted on one of the shows that I work on from behind the scenes. And it was a moment of just shifting from chilling, and I would like pop in on the talkback mic, and like I felt so comfortable doing that. But then suddenly when I was here, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, just like my hands. What do I do with my hands? I don't know how to be a person.
Yeah, which I think is also proof that not everyone should, or like it looks easiher than it is. Like I was going to say not everybody should have a podcast, but like,
well, we should have a podcast.
We should. Welcome to the billionth podcast out there.
Yeah,
but no, it is one of those things of like, it's much harder than it looks. Same with like acting, I think. Yeah. Like people just look at acting and think, oh, you should act like you're living life. And
it's really hard.
It's so much hard. It's hard to keep an engaging conversation for 45 plus minutes. Yes. Like, but we're going to try, damn it.
And make it seem like it's natural and bubbly and happy. And we're just like two really cool, fun people. Oh my God,
we're so cool.
We're just like super chill all the time.
So this is the first of the chit chat episodes of this podcast. We will also be rereading young adult novels if you read the description for the podcast. But if you just clicked on this and don't know anything, we should probably explain the like format.
We should.
So to give us time to read, just because we both work and live lives, we're going to every other week pick a young adult novel to discuss. We'll post about it on the Instagram. Follow us at the Who Killed Your Darling podcast on Instagram. And so you can read along with us. We'll let you know.
Yes.
And then at the weeks in between, we're just going to shoot the shit. And we figured our first episode, we would shoot the shit.
Kind of introduce ourselves.
We're also, like, you noticed, very rusty.
Yes. So we did have a podcast
it was not on video.
Ago.
I think the video is what's throwing, because I could just, like, have my gut out.
I know. Like, you didn't have to worry about how you looked. Yeah. You were just chilling in your house.
Yeah.
Your cat was there.
Yeah. My cat's not here. Well, he's here in spirit.
He's here in spirit.
We made sure my cat ended up on the artwork.
Yeah. But yeah, so our podcast, first podcast, our first podcast was Splice and Slice.
Yes, it was, again, a millionth true crime podcast.
I know.
We would compare the true crime stories to the often terrible movies that were made about them. Yeah. And that was a fun concept. And I've actually said that to some people at the podcast company that I work at, and they're like, oh, that is a cool concept. And I'm just like, yeah, that was kind of cool. But I think,
there's a lot of true crime podcasts out there, so kind of just like a drop of water in an ocean.
So we just decided to make a podcast because that's a much more shallow pool.
Yeah, there we go. Just a book podcast.
Yes. Well, yeah. We were hanging out one Saturday and we started talking about, because I went through I don't know if anybody does this. I was a big reader in high school and college, and then maybe due to lower mental health or whatever, I had a really hard time reading a lot for a while. And then in the past 6 months or so, I've really picked up on my reading game. And Adriana's always been a crazy, crazy reader.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I want you to tell your story first.
But I started reading again. And then we were hanging out one Saturday and we started I forget how we got on the topic of young adult novels that we loved as a kid.
We were at my house and you saw my Sarah Dessen books, and then we started talking about it.
And I loved Sarah Dessen, particularly Just Listen, which is the first book we're talking about. We'll be talking about it next week, next week. Time is an illusion. That was probably one of my absolute favorite books as a teenager, but I was talking to Adriana about it, and I was just like, I don't know why I felt so insecure reading those books. And I have a very clear memory of reading it during, because I also took theater, and sometimes we were doing stuff, sometimes we weren't. So I was just reading a book, and someone asked me what I was reading, and I showed her, and if this girl happens to remember this memory and happens to see this, I don't blame you.
She does though.
But she said, I read a Sarah Dessen novel once and I felt like it was such a waste of my time. And I was also very insecure. I wasn't good at standing in confidence in what I liked, no matter what people think. And I think a lot of high schoolers can relate to that. But it just made me feel really insecure because also when you're in that time frame, you're trying to figure out like
who you are, what you like.
And like it is that weird thing of almost a maturity competition at that age. And so there was kind of a hoity-toity thing if I was carrying like a fucking enter prolific novel here. Tolstoy, yes. Sure. I've never read Tolstoy.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of not books that we were reading at school either.
Plath,
like something. Yeah, the bell jar, let's say.
Yeah.
Like
sad girl book.
Yeah. Hi. But so it's just, it's that weird thing. And it's so stupid because one of my favorite quotes from a movie that I love that, shout out to my friend Jared, he hates and he's going to hate that I'm saying this.
Exactly what movie she is talking about and it's going to make me laugh.
But the movie is called Liberal Arts.
I knew it.
The guy who starred in How I Met Your Mother, Josh Radnor, that's his name.
Ted Mosby.
Yes.
No, it's just Ted Mosby.
He wrote, directed, and starred in it. It has Elizabeth Olsen. I highly recommend checking it out. If you hate it, great. If you love it, even better. But
I still haven't watched that.
It's lovely.
I need to watch it.
Don't listen to Jared. It's lovely.
I rarely listen to Jared.
Sorry, Jared. I love you.
We love you.
Love you, friend. But there's a moment in the book because it's like set on a college campus, and Josh Radnor's character, his name is Jesse, and Elizabeth Olsen's character is Zibby, and he sees, they never explicitly say it's Twilight on her nightstand, but it's Twilight. You know, context clues, it's Twilight. Mm-hmm. And he asks her, he's like, you read this? And she's like, yeah, very sincerely. And he's like, what, excuse me, what is it about? Like, and he's trying to find the substance. And he has a very elitist mindset. He's very, like, painfully elitist. It's infuriatingly elitist. Say that 5 times fast. Infuriatingly elitist.
I will not be able to.
But he takes the book and he's like, I'm going to read this. And he reads the whole thing in like a day and a half or whatever, and they meet back up to talk about it. And she says one of my favorite quotes ever that really did kind of shift the way I look at reading and look at books, because I think a big reason why I had a hard time reading for a while is like my brain just needed to read easy things, but I was like determined to keep reading really deeply thought-provoking things.
And that's how you get burnout.
Yeah. I was totally burnt out. And so Elizabeth Olsen's character says, I liked it. It was fun and it made me happy. And it wasn't Tolstoy, but it wasn't television. And I thought that was a really profound way to say it, because not to say that if you spend a lot of time watching TV, it's a waste either, but you're still reading a goddamn book. It doesn't matter what fucking book it is. Yeah. You're still reading it, and you're still like using parts of your brain that aren't used when you're watching TV or like doing other things like playing video games. And it just really resonated with me. And it's stupid because I do like those thought-provoking books, the classics. They're classics for a reason. But I also fucking love Sarah Dessen novels.
Yes.
So much. What do I just break this chair?
She's going to Hulk out.
Yeah. So anyway, that's yeah. Oh, that was such a long-winded thing. And yeah,
That's
and
okay.
so we were talking about Just Listen. At least I know how to talk.
Because that was like our favorite.
Yeah, we both started talking about it. And then Adriana had a ton of other young adult novels. Yeah. And then I randomly spouted while we were getting excited about talking about all these books, I randomly said, you know how there are all those like rewatch podcasts out there now? What if we did and Adriana and I both kind of screamed at the same time, like a reread podcast, but of the young adult novels. And then it spiraled into this thing of like, yeah, we totally should. We should take our power back here too, because a lot of the young adult novels that we love are geared toward women, and a lot of the ones that are deemed a waste of time or stupid or trivial are the ones geared toward women, like romance. Also, like, you know, rom-coms are also deemed as like really stupid movies. And it's because things that are made for women that women like are often minimized and viewed as trivial because sexism is a very real thing.
Yes.
So that's why we're here. We want to take our power back. Mm-hmm. And
I think my relationship to this podcast was also slightly different than yours, because I was always a really big reader. Mm-hmm. I'm a genius.
Shut up.
I don't want to brag. No, I'm just kidding. I just came from a family of very big readers, and I have ADHD, and hyperfocus is a thing. So when I hyperfocus, I read, and that is how I read so many books. I also work at a bookstore, so like it's very deeply ingrained. I have like 7 bookshelves at my house, and they're all full of books.
Yeah.
There's no room in my house anymore.
Nope.
I keep buying them. And I think my parents always encouraged me to read above my reading level, which is normal for parents to do, but it was also a way for them to like save money because they never took us to the library.
Oh.
There's an interesting story with that. And I feel like this is the reason why they never took us to the library. When I was a baby, they would take me and my sister to the library, but I would always like throw up.
Right. You mentioned
I
this.
did mention this, and I didn't really explain it to you because I wanted to save it for this podcast.
Oh my God, yes, I forgot because I was like, what the fuck
and
is that?
I told her, I was like, I used to throw up every time they took me to the library.
Did you have like a traumatic experience?
I don't know. So like
did a stranger just punch you in the face?
My poor sister, so I have an older sister. She's like 4 years older than me. So when my mom would take us both to the library, she'd be like, okay, quick, Elisa, go in, grab whatever book you want before the baby throws up. And more often than not.
How old were you?
I was like an infant.
Oh, so you can't even it's just coincidence at that point.
I don't know. But it kind of continued on until I was a toddler. And I feel like, so it was always just like, Elisa, we have very different like browsing methods in a bookstore. She goes to a bookstore and she knows exactly what she wants because she never had time to browse.
Because you were gonna
because
eject.
I threw up all the time.
Jesus.
And whereas I never had that problem because I am the youngest. Hello. So I like to cover every single corner of a bookstore.
Right.
Like I can't leave no stone can go unturned. She refuses to go to a bookstore with me now.
That is true. Now that I think about it, when we've gone to Book Soup in LA, I highly recommend Book Soup out there to anybody in the Los Angeles area. But yeah, I'm never in a rush.
Yeah.
Like I also wouldn't go to the bookstore, go to a bookstore with a friend. Yeah. If I was like, I'm just going to get in and out because we go to like hang and look at stuff. But yeah, you do you map the whole place.
I do. Even if it's like, I'll even go in sections where I don't even read those books and I still have to look because books. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like there was something in the air there that I was allergic to, which is why I get
like black mold.
I don't know. It's like, it was by a nature park. So like,
do those kinds of allergies make people vomit?
I don't know. I'm just trying to like
grasping at straws, my friend.
I am grasping at straws. There's no explanation. Or, I was always like, I hate libraries. I want to own all my books.
They just make me anxious because they're too quiet for me.
Yeah. It's not quiet when you took me there and I would throw up.
Just dead silence and you're just
my poor mother.
Don't have kids or use condoms.
Or always bring a barf bag.
That might come off like I implied that I wish Adriana didn't exist.
I know. Always bring.
I know. Don't have kids before you're ready, I guess is what I meant to say.
Always bring a barf bag to the library.
Not the amusement park, not an airplane.
Just the library, nowhere else. Anyway. So that was, I never really went to the library when I was a kid. I think my mom was trying to just keep my bodily fluids inside of my body.
Yes, that's where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Although sometimes more room out than in.
Yeah. And so as a money thing, because I read so many books, they always encouraged me to get longer books. So I really missed out on a lot of formative books from our childhood. I did read the Sarah Dessen books. There's a lot of other books that I just didn't read that we are going to cover.
Yes, and I got really excited when she hadn't read one specific book series that I was fucking obsessed with.
And I don't know, I never heard of that book series.
It didn't get super crazy popular.
It's still popular now, though. Like, we still sell that book at the
they're
store.
Still in print, but like it wasn't one of those books that at least I remember seeing a lot of people at school reading.
Mm-hmm.
Like you knew a book was really mainstream when you would see
everybody.
Carrying it with their books and binder and stuff.
And when she told me about that book series, I was like, I would have fucking loved that. I would have been all over that as a kid. I'm so excited to talk about this on the podcast. So I spent a lot of time reading all of the really heavy books and bringing them around and showing them off and trying to make people like me that way. It didn't work. Spoiler alert, people don't like it when you are pretentious and annoying.
It sucks too, because if an insecurity you have is about your level of intelligence, it's not coming from a place of being genuinely pretentious. It's coming from a place of like, I just want people to see that I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
But then it backfires and people are just like, oh, don't talk to her. She's going to make you feel stupid.
And it was also like, because I'm a very bubbly, outgoing person.
Yes. If you can't tell.
I know, right? So a lot of people, see somebody who acts like that and they're like, oh, she's just like ditzy, she's dumb, blah, blah, blah. So it was I was a way
probably
for
a
me.
sexist thing too
It
as well.
is. So it was also me trying to overcompensate for that by only reading the Tolstoys, the Dickens, the Sylvia Plaths. And
Also, if I may make an observation about your personality, Adriana loves fun facts and she does get very excited. And I know you, so when there is a situation where you come up with a fun fact or somebody says something about some random thing in history or whatever, Adriana will know and correct people. And we were talking about it one time and I said, I don't see you as being pretentious and like a know-it-all because I just know you just like a fun fact and
I love trivia.
And you just want people to have the right information. But somebody in a different state of mind, I can see why somebody would interpret that as, wow, she's such a know-it-all. She keeps correcting people. Oh, that's Bach, not Beethoven. And it's just like, Adriana just loves a fun fact. Like, it's not coming from a malicious place, but I can see how
somebody who doesn't know me.
Yeah. Somebody who doesn't know you would be like, oh, calm down. Like, shut up.
Nobody cares. I'm like, I care. I care deeply about everything all the time, forever.
Yeah.
So, and I was also went through a very like depressive episode when I was like in my early 20s, and I was looking around trying to find something to read in my house, and I was like, I hate all of my books.
Yeah.
I hate them all. They're so sad. They're so depressing. I don't want to read anything.
And probably some of them were just very Russian.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those books, I have never made it through a classic Russian novel in my entire life.
It's a lot of like, they're just, it was like the state of mind that I was in where they were just really depressed.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of fainting and
it's all fainting and famine.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, I don't want to read about that because I'm living it.
Yeah, fainting, famine, war, and racism.
There you go. And then that is when I discovered romance.
Like legit, like porn romance novels?
No, like the historic. I mean, there's like sex in them. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but aren't like romance novels like this? Categorized as like kind of porny.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, there's like books for men are also very porny, especially if it's like, this is why I don't usually read books written by men because men don't know how to write women.
They really don't.
Where it's like her boobs swayed boobily as she walked down. Like they like.
Have you seen those great TikToks where they so like? Good. We'll have to find some and like put them in the edit if I can remember. But yeah, where they talk about describing a woman like her boobs perked or whatever,
or like her boobs shyly turned inwards, and I'm just like my boobs can't do any of that.
Yeah.
They're not, they don't have sentience.
No, my boobs just
they just hang there. Yeah, they're just there. There was this one book I was reading written by a guy, and the protagonist was like a teenage girl, and she kept calling her tits like nubs. And I was like,
I don't like that.
And it was like a lot. She talked about them a lot. It was more than any woman talks about her breasts, like in normal everyday life.
Yeah, I feel like the most time women talk about their boobs is when you're in middle school and it's like the one who has boobs will talk about their boobs a lot.
Yeah, but that wasn't even like a thing because she was like, what, like 18, whatever. It was too much. And I was like, okay, if she calls her tits like nubs one more time, I'm going to put this book down and I'm not going to read it again. And 2 seconds later, the word nub just appears, and I was just threw the book across the room.
It's so stupid.
But yeah, so I discovered romance. It's just a lot of fun. My favorite are like the historical romances with like the step back covers. It's where you open it and it's just like a sexy picture of like,
I've never like gotten into romance novels.
They're just really fun.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's very fun.
I think you like, I'll recommend some to you, but like, it's if you like rom-coms, it's like watching a rom-com, but you're just reading it, and it's a good time.
It's a fun way to pass the time,
exactly,
and use your brain.
And it's also like if I had read more romance when I was younger, then I probably would have had a better idea of like what a healthy relationship looks like.
I mean, not always, because 50 Shades of Grey.
No, it depends on the romance novel.
Is 50 Shades of Grey technically a romance?
It's technically erotica, but it is in the romance section.
Okay.
That's not a well-written. I know we're not trying to pass any judgments, but
we can pass judgments on that because it was written by somebody not in the BDSM community.
Yeah.
And I am also not in the BDSM community, but from what I understand, that community was really offended by 50 Shades of Grey because the BDSM community is very big on communication and consent. And it's very emotionally like healthy, and they have to have that for it to be a safe space to explore that type of sexuality. And 50 Shades of Grey is not. It's just an abusive relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't 50 Shades of Grey like a Twilight fan fiction?
Yes, it was. It's not. It's pretty obvious.
Make that
too.
bad girl though.
Yeah. I know.
Not all women write good books.
It's true, and not all men write terrible women.
Yeah. Well, also, I was even thinking about it because we recently swapped 2 books between us. Adriana lent me a book called Final Girls by Riley Sager, and I lent her a book. Clear my throat. You don't have to tell me. You can just do it. And I'm gonna leave that in because I can mute your mic in the edit. I'm leaving this in.
It's doing great.
And then I lent Adriana a book called Before We Were Innocent. I'm blanking on the author's name. But Before We Were Innocent was written by a woman, and they're both kind of true crimey books. And when we each finished both, we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, there's just something missing in the female characters in Final Girls because it's written by a man. And it wasn't a bad story, and it also wasn't. I wasn't like offended by the female characters.
I wasn't either,
which is like huge, right? But in Before We Were Innocent, there were just those deep, complex, like
female. So both of the books dealt with like female relationships and friendships were really at the forefront of both of those novels.
Yeah,
and the difference between Riley Sager and Before We Were Innocent was I didn't feel like, and you agreed with me, we were talking about this, he didn't really dive deep enough into the complexities of like a relationship between 2 18-year-old girls where it doesn't make a lot of sense all the time. You can like hate somebody and love somebody at the same time. Like nobody knows how to get under your skin like your best friend.
Yeah, well, and it's also, I think, especially when Greta Gerwig was doing promo for Lady Bird, she talked about that a lot. And she said female relationships are really complicated, especially mother-daughter. Like you can be screaming at your mother and then 20 minutes later be laughing in the kitchen totally fine.
Literally, when I saw Lady Bird, I was like, that's my mom and me.
Yeah, female relationships are complicated.
And the difference, and Before We Were Innocent was the way the writer portrayed the relationship. It felt very real and it felt very raw. And it was like, yes, we might not have all been in a situation similar to those 2 girls, but we've all had that one friend who we simultaneously like love and want to throttle at the same time.
Yeah. And just even, because Before We Were Innocent goes between them being teenagers and adulthood, and the 3 girls as teenagers, it just felt so teenagery. Like they don't really know how to communicate their feelings. They're being passive aggressive, and they don't know how to express, I'm scared of all this change that's happening. I'm afraid of losing X, Y, and Z. So I don't want you to get close to and it was just so real. And I think that's one thing too about why, specifically as we've been talking about Sarah Dessen novels relate, because she's a woman and she knows how to write women. And I mean, it boils down to that thing too, where like studio executives used to have a whole thing when making movies of like everybody can relate to a movie starring a man, but only women can relate to film starring women. Yeah. And it's just so not the case. Yeah. Everyone can relate to everybody. And
I hate the term chick lit.
What?
Chick lit. Like,
oh, chick lit. Like chick flick.
Yeah,
Got
exactly.
It. Yeah, it's stupid because I also love a good romantic comedy. It doesn't have to be this revolutionary artistic film.
Yeah.
I love an artsy film and a deeply thought-provoking film, but sometimes I just want to watch 2 people dance around flirting. Will they fuck? Won't they fuck? Yes, they finally fuck. Now they're angry at each other. Oh, now they're happily ever after. It's just fucking nice.
It's fun. It's just fun. And romance is also, you have that built in happily ever after.
Yeah.
So whatever shit they go through in the like 300 or so pages, you know it's going to end happily.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need a happy ending. Life is shitty enough, all right? Yeah. The world is falling apart.
I also don't even necessarily mind romantic films that don't end perfectly tied up and happy. And I know like this isn't necessarily, oh, you haven't seen it. Maybe I shouldn't say. Well, do you know how La La Land ends?
I do.
Okay.
You can spoil. I don't care.
Did you hear how I fudged saying La La Land? La La La. That film ends. They are not together. They both get what they want out of life. You know, he opens his jazz club and she becomes a successful actress. But there's still something so lovely about watching that happen. And I don't know. I'm mad at the world. I'm also fucking sick of feeling embarrassed for liking the quote unquote stupid, emphasis on the quote unquote, stuff that I watch. Like, because there's just, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with it. And I also don't really like the term guilty pleasure.
I don't either. Because there's the artistic value in light, bright, happy things as well.
Or even like we've gone through phases where we watched the show 911.
Oh my God, I fucking love it. I just started watching it again.
I need to watch the new episodes. It's one of those like CW shows. It's about first responders and it's, you know, it's soap opera-y and dramatic. And
it's filled with beautiful people.
Beautiful people who are paramedics and firefighters. And
I just want to fantasize about beefy fireman.
Exactly.
Just like sweeping me up in his arms and saying, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. See, men can go onto Pornhub and look up, you know, jiggly booty and have a good time.
Is that the term? Jiggly booty?
I'm sure you can look it up on Pornhub. I'm sure some will come up.
Yeah.
Honestly, you could look up left sock, and I think a lot of stuff. You could Google any phrase on Pornhub, and it'll come up. But
it's like you can make anything sexy. Grandma's chicken salad.
But men have their ways of approaching fantasy, and so do we, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I just I haven't seen it, but that Sydney Sweeney rom-com that came out,
yes,
it's getting a lot of flack for being a bad movie. And
is it?
Yeah, and I haven't seen it. So I haven't seen it, and I'll probably watch it. And that's also the type of movie I'm not really gonna go out of my way to see in a theater. But once it's streaming, and I'm just chilling at home on a Saturday night, and I need something to watch, I will definitely put that on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's getting a lot of flack for not being very good. And I've seen some clips circulating online, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure it's perfectly fine. Yeah. People are also snobs. Like and I'm not saying I'm excluded from that narrative. No. I have been very snobby.
Same.
In my life. Usually when I'm feeling bad about myself
is
when I'm extra snobby about things. And that's a self-awareness we all should look into because it's probably a universal pattern.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just want this podcast to be exactly what this is. Just, you know, talking about that fun stuff. And then, you know, if people actually listen, then you can join in on the conversations about all the books we're going to talk about. Some of the books we do want to touch on, just to throw that out there, is, of course, like most Sarah Dessen novels, we will be touching on probably all of them. And we're also going to touch on, if anybody's familiar with the Blue is for Nightmares, White is for Magic series.
That is such a deep cut, and I've been mentioning it to people, and nobody's heard of it.
I don't know very many people who've read that one either.
Obsessed with that.
Me too, because that one, for anyone who doesn't know, it's to sum it up, it's this girl who is a witch, studied witchcraft with her grandma, and
she's at boarding school,
and she's psychic. She has dreams, and she, you know, gets premonition type dreams. In all three books, there's some sort of high stakes circumstance that she's trying to figure out.
Yeah,
and
it's like mystery thriller,
but there's also romance in there, and it's just like, yeah, not a lot of people know about that one. And I honestly think the only people that I grew up with reading those books were people that I lent the books to. Like I remember loaning them to people.
Reading those books at home, and my mom will not remember this, but I remember it's in my brain of her being like, those books are trash, Adriana. And I was like, you don't know. You don't understand me, Mom. I want to be a witch.
Right? No, it made me like, get into like a Wicca thing. And I mean, I've definitely evolved into like a, crystal astrology girl. The witch was always inside me. But yeah, it's such a...
They were just fun.
They were so fun. And like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Yeah.
That's like such a great story. The Princess Diaries, like...
Oh, I love the Princess Diaries.
All that shit. It's just so... They were so good and so fun and passed the time in such a useful way as a teenager. And it sucks.
In like such a wholesome way too.
Yeah.
Like, there are worse things you could have been doing than reading, the Princess Diaries.
Could have been doing whippets in a parking lot. It just connected the dots with whippets, by the way, everybody. And if anybody wants to know, it was
so funny.
I'm not like, it's funny because I'm not embarrassed about it because I'm not the only one. And like, to me, it makes perfect logical sense why I never would have connected those dots. So for everyone who doesn't know, the shit in a whipped cream can, the like nitric oxide or whatever it is, that can get you high if you snort it.
Yeah.
And
go and do it. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do it.
But like,
try it out. It's so much fun.
You don't have to get a can of whipped cream. You can get like the refills. Like Starbucks, they use like the reusable whipped cream things, and they have to get the refills of the. I think it's nitric oxide. I don't know, but
some kind of thing where
something oxide, and often people aren't getting whipped cream cans. They're just passing around these whippet things. So that's the only way I've known them is the little tiny tin. They look kind of like a bullet. Like that's the only way I've known. And it's like, oh, that's a whippet. And my brain didn't think whipped cream. I thought fucking like, oh, you're just like high and you're just like tweaking. Like, but then the other day I was at Trader Joe's and you know how heartbreaking it is to learn that the Trader Joe's people are told to flirt with you?
I choose not to believe that.
I used to feel so cute when I would leave Trader Joe's.
I did too. And my mom would be like, oh, that guy was flirting with you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling myself. Like, I am a strong, powerful, attractive woman.
But no, they're actually encouraged to be a little flirty, which is fine. But this guy was sparking up a conversation with me, and
your conversations at Trader Joe's are always so weird.
I think I attract the bizarre conversation.
No, I think you just... I don't know.
I am the bizarre conversation? I didn't say this,
I mean that in the best way, though.
Look, you're not wrong, but in this situation, you're wrong. Because
okay.
I didn't say this.
In this situation, but there have been other situations where you just said the most unhinged stuff. And I adore it. I love it. I love it so much because you say the things that I, like, think in my head, but I have, like, censored myself.
Yeah, sometimes I don't have a filter and I put a foot in my mouth real quick. But in this conversation, I had only said purely normal things.
I
he asked me like how my day was going, and like I was like, oh, it's good, just like, and you know, and he's like, any plans? And I was like, no, not really. Like I might get dinner with a friend, but like this is like, you know,
do some whippets in the parking lot.
Do some whippets in the parking lot.
Just like a regular Tuesday, bruh.
I was like, yeah, it's just kind of like a running errands, like cleaning up, like chores kind of day. And then and we just kept kind of talking or whatever. And then he told me one time a customer came in and took a whipped cream can and stuck it in his nose and said he gets high that way. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I posted that, me describing that interaction on Instagram. And then I Googled it because I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh, whippets. I was like, that makes so much sense.
I messaged her and I was like, you didn't know that? And I'm going to be like, I'm not the most with it. Just saying that gives you all the explanation you need to know about me. I'm not cool at all. I have no chill. So I was like surprised that I knew something about drugs that Robyn didn't. Not that Robyn is a druggie. Oh God.
I've experimented more than you have.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
I partied hard in college.
And I didn't really.
That's okay.
Yeah. I did for like 6 months, and then I was like...
But you never did whippets.
No, I never did whippets.
Loser. No.
No. See, Mom, aren't you proud of me? I never did whippets.
I feel like whippets are probably one of the safer drugs to do.
I mean, I didn't really do any drugs. I did pot. That was about it.
Is pot a drug? Do we...
No, but like at 10 years ago, yeah, it was.
Yeah. I'm not encouraging people to do whippets, but I was just thinking more in the sense of like a lot of drugs being laced with fentanyl these days, and whippets aren't gonna have that risk. So that's kind of where
whippets are safe for you guys.
I just pictured like a 50s black and white like housewife commercial, but encouraging people to do whippets, like a woman in a big like apron poofy skirt in a kitchen, just with like that mid-Atlantic.
When
like,
I have a hard day
she just pulls out a whipped cream can from like she's making a full cake for her husband on a Wednesday.
Ready whip.
And then she's just yeah. I don't know. What else is this? This podcast will evolve as we evolve. We're kind of
winging it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. We can talk about what have you been reading lately?
Well, I was also going to dive into, because we will definitely each episode have a segment of like, who killed your darling this week?
Yeah.
Do you have any? Did any of your darlings die this week?
Just my self-respect. No, I'm just kidding.
Jesus Christ.
Mercury's in retrograde, everybody.
Mercury is in retrograde. I've been having technological problems all week.
I've been having emotional problems.
I've also been very emotional. It's also eclipse season.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I don't think anybody killed my darling this week.
That's good.
Yeah, that is good. I'll take that. That's a win. I do have a funny story though from work.
Okay, share.
At my bookstore, a lot of times we get guys who are like my age or like in their, 40s or whatever, who are coming in asking for specific romance titles. Mm-hmm. And it's most of the time they are getting them for their wives or girlfriends.
Okay.
This one guy asked for a book, Credence by Penelope Douglas. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. I'll get into what it is about in a second. And I was like, in my head, I was like, okay, he's getting it for his wife or girlfriend.
Yeah.
I show him the book. He comes back to me not like 5 minutes later and was like, so I was reading the back of this book and it seems like really like spicy, like really spicy. And I was like, yeah. She's a very spicy writer. And he was like, yeah, my 12-year-old daughter asked me for this. And he was like, is this appropriate for her? And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not immediately. So Credence, Penelope Douglas is she has very, very spicy drama-filled books. But Credence in particular is 3 guys, 1 girl. And it's also, one of them is like an age gap.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. Right? I've never read the book. I don't know if they're doing it all at the same time or she's like bed hopping.
Either way. Too much work.
Right? And it's also like one of them is like an age gap. So it's like technically he's her guardian or something. I could be wrong. I don't know. But as soon as he said it was his 12-year-old daughter, my eyes just like bugged out of my head. And
yeah.
And apparently she's like read those books before. And then he was trying to find like another more age-appropriate book for her. And he was asking one of my other coworkers for help. And I happened to walk by the desk as she was looking up that book. And I was like, that's not appropriate for her either. Because technically it was a young adult book, but we shelve it in romance because it's not young adult. They're like 17, but they get down. It's also like step siblings. That specific book, and I was like...
Do you remember that show, Life with Derek?
Yes. Okay, so I showed Eric a clip of Life with Derek, no context. And I asked him, like, what he thought. And he was like, yeah, they like have a crush on each other. I was like, they're step siblings. And he was like, what? And I was like, they had so much sexual tension.
They did. And also, like, that show is not available to stream like anywhere.
Is it because they're...
I think Disney's tried to
it's not incest.
No. And like that's the thing too, where like I would love to hear a psychologist's take on
Life with Derek.
Or just like the thing of like I guess any step sibling romance. Because if I remember correctly with Life with Derek, they entered each other's lives around the age that they were in the show.
Yes. I think it was like the first season was their introduction.
So in that case, like, it's still weird, don't get me wrong, but it's an easier pill to swallow because they're just 2 horny teenagers
who are not related.
Who end up living in the same household because their parents got together. And I think if their parents had gotten married when they were very young and they grew up more as siblings, I think that would be like significantly more twisted because
my friend, I was talking to her at work about Life with Derek, and she sent me like this commercial. It was like an old commercial from like 10 or 15 years ago, Folgers like coffee commercial, where it's like a brother comes home and his sister's like making him coffee. And I was like, they have a lot of chemistry but they were like actual siblings. And it was just like them alone in the kitchen. And I'm going to send it to you, but it was really weird. It was a weird commercial.
There was also this trend on TikTok going around, like highlighting weird brother-sister relationship dynamics. I don't have any brothers and neither does Adriana.
No,
so like
I don't know how that relationship works.
I mean, I've seen what I presume to be the normal thing where like you care for each other, but you also like, you know, like one of you walks into the room the other's in and you like just punch the other one.
Yeah,
like,
but that's what my sister and I do.
Yeah, like, but it is like a weird,
like my frame of
dynamic.
reference for a brother-sister relationship is Monica and Ross from Friends, which I have also been told is not normal because they talk about their sex life a lot together.
Yeah, I have always thought about that because I feel like it's a little more normal for two sisters to talk more in depth about their sex life.
Yeah.
Because I've talked about sex in detail with both of my sisters but that's a little more girl
really
talk.
like we don't really go in depth, but we like my sister and I have talked about it before. But
yeah, in Friends, Ross is like around when she's like, you know, hooked up with people
and
they're
he's
like
like
leaving
congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on one hand you could just view that as like somebody just having a really healthy output on sex. But I don't know. Yeah. The brother-sister dynamic. I mean, I know some people also comment on like if people start dating somebody that looks like their sister or brother, but that actually psychologically is very normal because years ago there was a study done where they had a bunch of subjects look at photos, and one of the photos was of just like a complete stranger, and another photo was the opposite sex parent's face blended with a stranger's photo. And all these people were heterosexual, and they all majority of the people thought the blended photo was the more attractive one.
Interesting.
And like, you know, psychologically too, they say like you marry your parents. Like, and
it's so interesting because there was one time where I was doing a show. Robyn and I are actresses. This was a community theater show. My boyfriend, Eric, had come to the show and she remembers this. So we were talking after the show and like I was, you know, we were being very touchy-feely. And then I kissed him, and then later on, when I was in the dressing room, one of my co-stars was like, "Oh, Adriana, I saw your brother came," and I was like, "Brother, I don't have a." And I was like, "Oh no,
you two do look like you could be related."
And I was like, Laura, I was kissing him. What do you mean? So then we just kept calling Eric my brother, as like an inside joke. But then at the cast party, that woman's husband came, and like I was calling Eric my brother, and we were like kind of.
You set yourself up for this weird situation.
But it was fun. It was really funny. I think it's funny. He does not think it's that funny. I think it's hilarious because after, like, my friend told me they were driving home and her husband is like, "So Adriana and her brother are like weirdly close." And then she was like, "That's her boyfriend." He's like, "Oh, thank God."
Jesus.
We do look.
You look like
similar
you could be related
in that, you know. He's Italian. I'm half Italian. You know, I'm half white. So we kind of have similar coloring, similar hair color. I don't think we look related. And I have to believe that. You can think it. You can say it. I'm not going to say it because it would be weird.
Okay. I don't think they're like, but like I just said, like psychologically it makes sense. And like people have said that Phineas's girlfriend looks a lot like Billie Eilish, and people are like, that's so fucking weird. And
I'm sorry, you said Phineas and I thought Phineas and Ferb.
No, I'm in the 21st century. Phineas and Ferb was also in the 21st century.
I was about to say, that show is awesome.
I never watched it.
I know you don't like cartoons.
I'm not a big cartoon fan. But people have said that's so weird that his girlfriend looks kind of like his sister. And I'm just like, I don't think it is though. Like they're like I've known about that study for a long time because I was just curious too. Because also like behaviorally too, very often we end up in relationships that emulate our parents. How did we get here?
We're talking about Life with Derek. And then we were also talking about the step sibling book.
Right. I just also want to clarify though, like I'm not encouraging step sibling incest.
I don't think it's incest. I think it's weird.
It's definitely weird.
It's legal.
Is it?
I mean, they're not technically related. Is it legal? Do you guys know? I feel like Dora the Explorer. Tell me if this is true.
Because incest is genuinely illegal, right?
Is, yeah.
Okay. What about those situations where two people were adopted and they end up together and they find out they're siblings?
Like Luke and Leia. That's not a 21st century reference.
No. But yes. But there are also real life scenarios where two people, and that also I think loops back to that psychological study where we're drawn, not even just romantically, we're like drawn to people.
Yeah. Well, there's also like have been stories of people who like find out that they're like second cousins or something.
Yeah, it happens, especially with 23andMe. It happens all the time. But there are like many situations of two people who were adopted, both of them, who figure out that they're full or half siblings.
Real parent trap situation.
I don't even know what you do in that situation.
I don't either. Like I know there are some where the ones where they're
stay
like
together and just like hope for the best.
Yeah, there have been some where they find out that they're like second cousins and they're just like we were never gonna have kids anyway.
Yeah.
So like,
but some of these people already have.
Who
kids
are we
when they
hurting? That I don't know. That's insane to me. And
their kids are fine. I remember I heard a story on TikTok one time about something where like they already had kids. They figured out they were either half or full siblings. Oof. Their kids were fine. I don't know what happens when you find that out.
Are they fine though? Because they found out that their parents were siblings.
I don't know.
We're getting to some real heady topics on this show.
Listen, I don't support incest.
No, let's just put a disclaimer out. None of us support incest.
We're talking about the quandary that is step-sibling.
We're talking about the philosophical quandary.
Yeah. Or like,
what do you guys think?
Oh my God, we also forgot to shout out her boyfriend wrote us the theme song you heard at the top of the podcast episode. He is a composer and sound designer, and Adriana and I recorded the vocals.
We're all very this is a group of very talented individuals.
We're all triple threats.
I was like, I'm not a triple threat.
I'm not a triple threat either.
I can't dance.
Me either. I can't dance. But yes, well, oh my God, I can't believe we're waiting till like basically the end of this episode to shout out.
We were so excited.
It sounds so good.
It was amazing.
Very fun.
He's amazing. I'm a fan.
I would hope so.
Oh, yeah, I live with him.
You live with the man. You're in love with the man. I'm a fan. I'm platonically a fan.
Yes, I love that. He's platonically a fan of you. He's very excited for this podcast.
Yay.
It was really funny when he was working on the song. He was working on the weekends because he has a real job. And my parents were calling me one day and they were like, "Oh, where's Eric?" And I was like, "Oh, he's like working on the theme song for the podcast." And they were like, "Why are you making him work on the weekends, Adriana?" Like, I was like, I'm not.
He volunteered.
He wanted to do it. He was so excited.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I got so excited when she asked me if what I thought about him writing us a theme song. And the thought crossed my mind when we started brainstorming the podcast. But I, and you agree, but like, I work in the industry in a lot of ways as a freelancer, and I never want to take advantage of people because the words that I hate the most are for experience or resume builder. No, pay your fucking people.
I hate those so much on your behalf.
Thank you.
But we went through a journey with that too.
Yeah, and I think the only time the only time I find that okay is if like somebody volunteers. Like it's the same thing of like if, because I am a freelance editor, I work on podcasts. If a friend was doing something, I'd be like, oh, like, or actually a great example is once again, shout out Jared. He made like a short film that he shot himself, and it was like
he was surrounded by very talented people.
He was playing all the like kind of different voices and facets in his brain, and he was describing it to me, and I said, "Oh, like I'll edit this for you." Like, and he didn't pay me, but like I volunteered. Like it was a thing where I was like, I want to do
Yeah.
this for you. So like if a friend who has a skill set volunteers, like I think that's fine. But I'm never gonna ask somebody to do something.
Yes.
So in my head, I was like, it'd be so cool if he wanted to write us a theme song.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where like he probably wouldn't have even cared if you asked him, but it was like it would be easier for me to ask him on our behalf.
Exactly.
But he was so excited, and also he is a composer, but for his job right now, it's mostly just sound design for video games. He's a very cool job, so much cooler than mine. And he's mostly focusing on like sound effects, so he hasn't really had a chance to write music in a while, which is something that he's been wanting to do. So this like gave him the opportunity. So I was like, no, I'm not exploiting. Sometimes I feel like my parents love my boyfriend more than me.
That's something to unpack in therapy. All three of you.
I mean, he's so cool. Like, I get it.
But also, like, and not to diminish the work because it does take a lot of time and effort to make a theme song, but it's also not like a full song we're asking for. It's
it
like
was
30 seconds.
Yeah,
or something.
Like he can knock that out in his sleep. Like, he did it so quick.
The moral of the story is pay your artist friends unless they explicitly volunteer to be a part of
and say like, and they say
project.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't just assume that.
Also,
okay
the second we make any money, he's getting something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to Eric for the theme song. And thank you to all of you for
tuning in.
And next week, we will be talking about Just Listen
by Sarah Dessen.
I'm very excited.
Yes. So if you want to grab the book, read along, we'll have a link in the show notes and the Instagram of where you can purchase the book if you want to. Shout out to Book Soup.
Shout out to Book Soup and
support local businesses.
Yeah, and you can follow both of us on Instagram. Links below, and you can once again follow the podcast at Who Killed Your Darling Podcast on Instagram, and like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and follow us. Subscribe on YouTube if you also want to look at our
beautiful faces.
Gorgeous mugs.
And follow us on this reading journey.
Yes, and we'll always post on the Instagram what books are coming up, so you can grab your copy and read along and revive your darlings with us. So thanks for tuning in to the Who Killed Your Darling podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye! Darling.